nandito kasi ako, wala akong aircon dito eh. At nakakapay pa yan yung buwan niya. I actually started as a business as a student, and it's a common refrain and a common joke nung nasa college ako. When I shifted to MASCOM, yung katabi ko had shifted from electrical engineering pagkatapos yung nasa kaliwa ng cheming. And the common refrain that you can imagine, and as I imagine, still goes on nowadays. Like, well, may kasi ako sa math at ganun sa akin ng math. So I had to leave the College of Business Administration, went to mass communication, which really, journalism was really my love. In high school, that really was my field of the editor of our high school paper. As I imagine a lot of you are here as well. But here's the point that I'm going to make. It's not a funny joke. Hindi na nakakatawa yan. Yan, mahina ako sa math, kaya ako na sa MASCOM, mahina ako sa math. It's not true. And I say this for the benefit both of the students and also the educators. I think it's great that we're here to talk about journalism research and therefore journalism curricula in particular. And hopefully later, I think it's part of my presentation that we really should place more emphasis on numbers, on appreciating numbers, and not just for the numeracy of it, but also for the future of journalism and so on. Okay. Gaya ko lang nabanggit, I'm wearing two hats right now. I am editor-in-chief of Interaction.com, which is the online news portal of TV5. And at the same time, as of last year, I also became concurrently editor-in-chief of Business World. I mentioned this because this is what I'd like to do over the next 30 minutes. I'd like to share with you what we've learned over 4 years in Interaction. And at the same time, what I'm learning now, coming back to print, to newspaper journalism. First thing I always share about Interaction, people always ask when I say we're the online news portal of TV5, people don't actually realize that we are TV5. And therefore people ask us, bakit hindi TV5.com or TV5news.com or bakit hindi news5.com? And it's simply because 4 years ago when we started, when they invited me to join TV5 and to set up this website for news, and sabi ko, you know, I'll be perfectly honest, I don't know what new journalism is supposed to look like. I do not know what new media really means. We don't really know. And therefore I said, we cannot call this TV5 News, and we cannot call it news5.com. For simple reason that I don't want to be boxed into news, and I don't want to be boxed into TV. What exactly do I want to do? I really don't know. All I know is we needed that latitude. We needed to blur the lines because we knew that new media was already blurring the lines in journalism, in advocacy, in social media. Wala pa nga social media ng panahon and so on. But we needed to blur the lines. In other words, we needed latitude to experiment. Buti na lang, the anchor news program of News 5 was Action, and therefore the high-five moment for us, dalawa lang kami noon, was to call it Interaction. And we got pretty clever about it. And over the past 4 years, we've learned a lot about journalism, about how important it is to experiment with the platform. In other words, kailangan namin panindigan yun, that we are not just TV online. In much the same way that Business World, bworldonline.com should not be just a newspaper online. That would be not making the most of new media, of the internet, of mobile phones, and who knows, whatever else is out there. I don't know if there will be applications for news on the new Apple Watch. We don't know what, we keep talking about wearable devices. We don't know how journalism will eventually have platforms and extensions on these new platforms as well. Okay, so what have we learned? There's three things that I want to share, what we've learned on Interaction. Right now, Interaction gets, after 4 years, we get anywhere from 300 to 400,000 unique users a day. That's from 0, 4 years ago. On a good day, we will hit 500,000 unique users a day. And 70% of our traffic, as you can imagine, comes from social media. Primarily Facebook. Twitter is great, but people don't really click through the links on Twitter. Kaya nag-umpisa ako sa Interaction, I remember my daughter was grade 6. And sabi ko sa kanya, yabang-yabang pa. Sabi ko, Kia, we have ano na. Interaction has Facebook na. We have Twitter na. Sabi sa akin ng anak ko, why aren't you on Tumblr? So, syempre, hindi ko alam yung Tumblr. Ginugol ko. Di syempre, mali spelling ko. And then my son said, you should be on 9gag. So, all the more, I had no idea what 9gag was. So, tinitingnan ko. Then I looked at my daughter and my son, and I was watching them, and they were, I was literally behind them, and I watched them. And they were literally like this, and I think most of the audience here will recognize yourselves in this. They were like this. So that was peculiar to me because they weren't really doing anything, and yet they were laughing. And at the same time, something struck me about 9gag in particular, which is that there were no words. They were basically just looking at pictures. There was nothing. I was really worried for my children. But, you know, I told my staff, we have to look at this Tumblr thing, and we have to look at this 9gag thing. And of course, 4 years later, there's no point in talking about Tumblr and 9gag. And now my daughter says, you really should get on Snapchat. And Viber, for that matter, and all of these platforms. Which just goes to show that the field is moving faster than any of us can figure out. Facebook is still important, no matter how people say it's no longer cool. Mark Zuckerberg, I think, had the right answer to that. Every time he's asked, oh, Facebook is cool, Twitter is cool, or Instagram, or for that matter. And Mark Zuckerberg said something to the effect of, Facebook, we're Facebook, we don't need to be cool. And it's true. They have gotten to the point that Facebook is like email. Email is not cool. But Facebook is at that level, and it's Twitter that has to be desperate to try to remain cool in the face of Instagram and Snapchat and all of these newfangled platforms out there. But what's the point here? 70% of the traffic comes to social media. And when my daughter told me, you're not on social media, well, 4 years ago, that was easy to laugh off. She was after all grade 6. She was grade 6. But my daughter now, just 4 years later, is now going to be 4th year high school. And that goes by very fast, not just for a parent. But she's going to be 4th year high school in the next school term. Which means if we do not figure out Snapchat, if we do not figure out Instagram, if we do not figure out Viber or WhatsApp, or I really don't know, you have to help me out. If we don't figure it out, it means that for 70% of my potential hits, I cannot speak to next year's college students. Or probably we no longer reach a lot of you here if you are not on Facebook. And for a media company, that is really a nightmare. And so what we tell each other in Interaction and what I'm now communicating to business world is that It doesn't matter what you write, it doesn't matter what you produce. If you do not understand social media, all your work does not exist. You could do an investigative piece, an investigative report, you could have your own blog, and so on. But until you post it on your Facebook page, and until you tweet it, it does not exist. It is the tree falling in the forest that nobody sees. So that's the first thing we want to share. It's nothing new. I'm sure you know it in your gut. But I don't know if people realize how big a phenomenon it is. 70 to 80% of our kids come from social media. And it will come via over-the-top products like Viber eventually. Before, when we started, 5% of our kids came via mobile. Now, 50 to 60% of our kids come via mobile. So all of these things just illustrate how fast this is going and the urgency of us needing to reach the new readers, the new consumers of news. This has implications also when we try to understand if Facebook is now the front page of our lives, then what are our children reading and consuming by way of news? Yeah? And that's literally true. About 10 years ago, when you started an online news portal, doesn't matter anywhere in the world, all the figures I'm telling you doesn't matter anywhere else in the world. 70 to 80% of the traffic of any website comes via social media. And before, up to 90% of the visits to news sites came via the home page. I don't know when anybody went to the home page of any news site these days. Most of your interactions, ask yourself, for any news that you consume, come via Facebook, which means your first interaction with a news item is via an article. And then you go to the home page, and maybe you'll click on something else, and then you will leave. That's the behavior. But just 10 years ago, the behavior was you deliberately go to the home page, which means it gives you even just 5 to 10 seconds to glimpse at everything else that is going on in the world. Kahit hindi mo basahin. But inevitably, you will see what's happening in Maguindanao.